Hello, everyone. You're very welcome.
Hello and welcome to our talk, Your Child and Dyslexia. I am Sarah Watchhorn,
And I'm Sarah McGuire.
and we are the co-founders and co-directors of the Reading Academy. We have been teaching and working with students with dyslexia for over 40 plus combined years. It is something we are passionate about, and we hope this evening you take something from our talk, something of benefit to you and your child. Tonight, this is what we're going to be covering. What is dyslexia? What I need to know as a parent to help support my child, and what reading intervention means, and why it is important for my child with dyslexia. So let's have a look at our mission. Our mission is to ensure that each child with dyslexia becomes a reader. So, about dyslexia. Dyslexia is a specific learning difficulty, or an SLD, that affects 10 to 15% of the population. Depending on where you are with your journey and with your child, you may have already had an educational psychological assessment. You may be just, starting to learn a little bit about dyslexia. But if you've had a report done, an assessment done, you'll see that for a child to be diagnosed with dyslexia, they've got to have an average IQ score with a discrepancy in word reading. So there has to be that difference between the average IQ and then what the score is coming out with for word reading. It will be a big discrepancy. Your child with dyslexia will have reading, writing, and spelling difficulties, maybe just one or two of these, or all three. Dyslexia may or may not be genetic, and more research is pointing to dyslexia being genetic. And you might find that interesting in that we have many parents saying to us, I'm convinced that I'm dyslexic, I was just never diagnosed. Or my older child is dyslexic, so I knew kind of what to look out for, my nephew, my niece, etc. Dyslexia ranges from mild to severe, and Sarah and myself have worked with children with mild dyslexia all the way to very severe dyslexic children. And dyslexia can coexist with other difficulties. So, for example, ADHD, Asperger's, dyspraxia, and dyslexia can stand alone as well.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about dyslexia, and we always like to start with the country road analogy that on the journey of someone with dyslexia compared to someone that does not have dyslexia. So if we take two cars and we put them on two separate roads, if we take the individual driving a car on a country road, and then we also take an individual putting them into a car and they're on the motorway. The person on the windy road, the old country road, has many curves. It's going to be a slow journey. There could be a tractor on the road. There could be animals on the road. There could be diversions, but whatever it is, it's going to take a long time to get from point A to point B. And then you're going to have the individual that's on the motorway. They jump into their car and their journey is quite straightforward. There may be a couple of hiccups along the way. However, it's still going to be pretty consistent and pretty reliable and speedy. So when we're looking at these two journeys and we're saying there's nothing wrong with either of the cars, it's only the journey that's taking a different route. Okay, it's taking a long time to get from point A to point B on the country road, and it's quite direct for the person that's traveling on the motorway. One of the most common learning difficulties is dyslexia. 10 to 15% of the population. That's quite a large number, especially when you're looking in an average size classroom. You're looking at 3 to 4 students per classroom that have dyslexia. Something really interesting about our brains when we're looking at an individual with dyslexia, as Sarah was talking about the research pointing to genetics, we also know that our brains are not wired to read. When scientists are studying the brains of individuals with dyslexia, they're noticing that in the brains of dyslexics, that those pathways are not clear like they are for those that do not have dyslexia. I think one thing that's very reassuring, especially for parents, is that early literacy exposure does not prevent dyslexia. I know so many of you that are sitting out there tonight, when your children were very young, that you'd sit and you'd read the books to them and you'd expose them to literature and you'd talk about the pictures and the meaning and the story within these books and very special times. And you're thinking, but this is what all the research points to. And they tell you to do all these things with your child to make them reading ready and to prepare them for their schooling. And unfortunately, because of the way their brain is with with the pathways not clear cut, that early exposure has actually nothing to do with your child having dyslexia. And we also want to say too is that we, especially after working with the students for so many years, definitely know that it is definitely not due to an unwillingness to try or a lack of interest in learning. I think it can often be quite frustrating for a parent if it's ever taken that way, because when you know your child and when you're seeing them at home and how vulnerable and frustrated they are because they sit in that classroom every single day and they're watching all their peers absorb this information like sponges, and they're able to just do without instruction, and the reading just comes naturally to them. And for your child, it's not like that. That's not the journey that they're on, and it's quite difficult for them. And reading is often something they're desperate to learn how to do. There isn't a cure or a magic wand to fix dyslexia. Unfortunately, it's strategy, it's intervention, and it's a lot of hard work, really, for becoming an accurate and fluent reader. Dyslexia affects people of all backgrounds. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It is something that you are born with. And with the bright side of all of this is that with the appropriate educational interventions, individuals with dyslexia can learn strategies and tools to help them manage their difficulties, and often quite successfully.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So let's have a look now at dyslexia and your child in the classroom. They may have phonological difficulties, or your teacher, your classroom teacher may flag this to you. And this is basically the ability to recognize and also to manipulate the sounds, the spoken parts of words, the spoken parts of sentences. For example, you might have realized and recognized that your child isn't able to rhyme very simple words. That can be a phonological difficulty. Your child can have difficulty with sequencing processes, and in the classroom, this can show up in maths class, for example. But this can be, in many different areas. But there's an awful lot of sequencing involved in maths. Your child could have difficulty with organizing and planning in all areas of daily life. And I'm thinking of even a student I was working with today who finds it very difficult to keep her desk organized. So, just making sure that you ask the child to take out just what they need and nothing else. But they can find it very difficult to organize themselves, as well as organizing their thoughts. They can confuse left and right. And this is something I know, and a friend of mine has said that he's convinced he has dyslexia, and one of his red flags was confusing left and right. An inability to pair speech sounds with letters and vice versa. And then this classic kind of idea of dyslexia where, oh, is that when, the letters are backwards? This is one of the characteristics. And not all children with dyslexia do it, but there can be a confusion of letters and words that look somewhat alike. So the B and D that we have down there at the bottom, that would be the most common. But it could be even a whole word, for example, was and saw. And this is both in the spoken word, in reading, and in writing. Difficulty copying words and numbers from a book or whiteboard. This can be a very onerous task for a child with dyslexia. It's a skill that we kind of take for granted, to be able to copy something down, either from a board or from a book next to us. For a child with dyslexia, this can be extremely difficult, actually. Okay, the Orton Gillingham approach. Some of you may have heard of this, either from a teacher or an education psychologist or a friend. You may have read about it. You may have come across it on the internet. Well, research shows that the Orton Gillingham approach is the most effective approach for teaching individuals with dyslexia. It is a multisensory approach. So what does that mean? It means that if your child was using an Orton Gillingham based program, then they're going to use more than one sense simultaneously. And that is the idea of a multisensory program. Orton Gillingham traditionally is done in a small group or one-to-one instruction. And the focus is on your child as an individual, your child's individual needs. And very importantly, your child dictates the pace of learning. So it's not a one-fits-all program if it is following the Orton Gillingham approach. It's very individual. Okay, if your child is of primary school age, we'll have a look here now and see what kind of reading intervention they require. Firstly, general phonic programs won't work. And this we can say after years and years of research that we've conducted, and practical research as well. General phonic programs aren't enough for a student with dyslexia. They may, your child may get to a certain point and not be able to go any further. And it's just that your child with dyslexia will struggle with the phonic programs, in a sense that the strategies, they don't have the strategies to be able to categorize the sounds, to organize the sounds, both in their heads and then on the paper and on the page. So it can be very confusing for your child who has dyslexia. And not only that, but their peers might manage quite easily with a phonic program. So now they're not only having a difficulty with it, but they're also comparing themselves, which can then affect their self-esteem and confidence. So the reading barriers lie elsewhere. It's not enough to say, we'll do this phonic program and that'll be it. So that's something very important to remember. The focus has got to be on intervention. So learning how to read and filling those gaps. The gaps that we speak of are, your child compared to his or her peers, your child compared to his or her younger sibling who's now overtaking your child with dyslexia, and you're constantly trying to narrow the gap. The use of a comprehensive reading intervention program is vital. So it's got to have so many components to it in order for it to be effective. It's got to be multisensory, direct, and explicit in its instruction. So that means an instructor will demonstrate, there won't be any room for confusion, and it'll be very specific in its instruction, learning one concept or skill at a time.
Okay, so now let's look at the secondary age, school age child. When a child reaches secondary school, you're going to want to turn to assistive technology. And let's just look here real quick. When you notice that Sarah was talking about intervention, reading intervention, and when we move on to secondary school, we're looking at using assistive technology that will assist in someone's learning. Okay. Now, why is this so different? Or why are we saying in secondary level? Well, we're saying it for a few reasons. When a student is in primary school, it is so important for them to learn how to read, to be able to get the foundations. Everyone should learn those skills, where in secondary school, we're coming to the curriculum where the reading demands are so great on the children that they're reading for information at this stage. So they have to read so much within a short amount of time that they need to be able to get as much information for learning that as possible. So what we're going to be looking at most importantly is where you see the C pen. Okay. The C pen comes in two different types of pens. You have what they call the orange pen and you have the white pen. The orange pen is an exam pen. The exam pen can is a read-only device, and the state allows that to be used in state exams. So it's been sanctioned. So the reason then we recommend the C pen is because they also have this white pen, and the white pen can be used for everyday study. But what it does is it gives, if a student becomes comfortable using this and finds it useful, well, then when it comes to exam time, they're going to be quite confident and they're going to be able to use the technology in the way that it was designed to assist them to do the best that they can, because they're not being tested on their reading, they're being tested on their knowledge. Okay, so really the technology that's out there, the assistive technology that's out there, has been created for older individuals to assist them through these different learning environments. And you really want to focus on utilizing it for what it was intended to be used for. So one of our recommendations is that when a child is in 5th and 6th class in primary school, that's when you introduce assistive technology, but you're going to probably do so at home. And what you want to do is introduce your child to many different types of assistive technology so that by the time they get to secondary school, they're quite comfortable and efficient at using it. So I always think of assistive technology like going into an electronics store, and if I'm buying a phone or if I'm buying a laptop or a tablet, whatever it is, I'm going to have a certain preference, or something's going to be really easy for me to use. Whereas my husband may walk in and want something completely different because he finds that much easier for his needs. So there isn't a one size fits all answer for assistive technology, but as long as your child has the opportunity to experience, to trial these different types of technology and find out what benefit they're learning, that's the most important part. And then be able to use it by the time um, they enter secondary school and have these huge demands being placed on them. Okay. So we're going to talk to you about some suggestions for your child with dyslexia. At school, it's really important to form a relationship with your child's mainstream teacher and special education teacher or team, and make sure that everybody is communicating and everybody is singing off the same hymn sheet. So, when you're working with a child with dyslexia, you want to make sure that all the different people involved in that process are working on um, the strengths of the child and also working um, to close those reading gaps that they have, and to bring them and give them those strategies that they need to make their educational experience that much easier for them. You can talk to the class teacher and special ed teacher about your child's seat in the classroom. Most of the time, they do best when they're sitting up closest to the board. But again, it usually depends on the layout of the classroom. But this is where that communication is so important, that this is something that you're discussing, that you're talking. Again, making the room work for your child. Taking information from the board. If your child is one of these children that struggle copying the correct information down, well, how can this be addressed? How can your child be helped? And as a group, you can look at the different ways that, by talking to the teacher, they're going to tell you how they deliver the information. And again, it's this working together, being a team. Not being asked to read aloud. This can depend on the child. Some children with dyslexia hate to be called out to answer questions, read aloud, anything like that. And then you'll have other students that, they're the first to raise their hand. So it's the talking. Helping to organize, or helping to have your child get organized for going home and their homework journal. Many times students, those that have the difficulty taking things down from the board, then they go home with either forgetting to write something down, they have misspelled something, or taken the numbers down wrong of the pages that they need. And so when the journal comes home and they're trying to figure out what it is that they're supposed to do, they have no idea, or they end up doing all the wrong things. And it can cause a lot of frustration the next day when they don't have what they need, or it can cause frustration at home when nobody knows what is supposed to be completed for homework. And the last that we're going to talk about is the Irish exemption. Depending on your child's report, it's either going to be suggested or not. And now that's all done within your schools. So again, be talking with the special education teacher, the mainstream teacher, the principal, because it's the principal that will give the exemption. Okay, so I think the real key from this is the communication, but how it plays through, so many different areas within the daily routine of the school. And again, if everybody's on the same page, then your child's chance of success are that much better within the school setting. And at home. At home, this is a difficult one. Remove all distractions during homework time, because homework time is usually when everybody's entering the house, when a lot of activities are going on. So people are getting ready to go to different places. But especially for the child with dyslexia, the more distractions that can be eliminated from the homework area, a quiet area is so necessary for them to be able to concentrate, for them to be able to process what they need to be doing. So, as hard of an ask as it is, it's something that's very important for your child. And the second one is to sit with your child whilst doing their homework. So this could be yourself, their carer, where they are after school, but it makes such a difference to the child if someone is sitting with them during the homework time. And it's helping them with their organization. It's keeping them on task. It's making sure they're understanding what they're doing. And it can just make the whole activity that much less frustrating for your child. One thing that we always suggest to our parents is to practice high frequency words. They often come to us and they say, well, what is something that we can just be doing, as a non-teacher, that I could do with my child at home, that I just know is going to be helpful. High frequency words make up about 50% of what you see in literature. So these words have all been gathered, and if we have some downloads, and I think they will be available to all of you, and you can cut them out and just practice those words with your children 5-10 minutes every single night, and just run through them, only 4 or 5 words at a time until they know them with automaticity. You can help your child get ready for the next school day. If it means making sure their bag is at the back door, if it's keeping their shoes at the back door, where are their shoes, laying out their uniform, anything to make that morning routine that much easier, making sure that everything is packed in their bag, even once they finish homework, maybe having some sort of a checklist system that that they know that they have everything that they need. The other, practice using different types of assistive technology, just what we were talking about. If they're in 5th and 6th class, this is just an opportune time. Color code class folders and notebooks. Now, this one is really helpful for going into secondary school. Maybe green is science. So everything they have that's green, that's their science class. Math's red. And they know then if they have lockers, pull all the green books, I'm going to science class. Pull all the red books, I'm going to maths class. Or I have maths homework tonight, I need all my red books. And the last one that we always think is very helpful for the students is to map out schedules for projects. If you know a big project is coming up, if it's an essay, if it's a science project, whatever it may be, even, exams coming up, if we're talking about secondary school students, work backwards. Try and come up with something that would work for your child that they're comfortable with, and the workload is something that they're able for, and that they're comfortable with a schedule. And then the second part is making sure it's adhered to, and it just removes all the stress and creates organization for your child. Okay. Sarah, if you want to finish this off.
We are going to leave you with a quote, one of our favorites by Frederick Douglass. Once you learn to read, you will be forever free. We hope you enjoyed this evening, and we hope that you have taken something from it. And if you'd like to visit our website, it is there. It's the readingacademy.ie. We're also on Facebook at thereadingacademy.ie. And on our website, you'll find some useful information. And we hope that you all have been helped this evening somewhat on your journey with your child with dyslexia.
Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
you, and bye-bye.